So everybody, welcome to Black and Super Blerd Culture, Past and Present. I am Corey from the Suffolk Public Library. Today we're going to chat with a couple guests. We have Nix of Do You Speak Geek and Hilton George of BlerdCon. Unfortunately, our third guest, Katie Bond, she was unable to join us this evening. Though she wanted to. She is doing a program with us in the future, so if you are interested, she's going to be doing a writing world building panel with us in the coming months. So definitely check our calendar for that. Also definitely check out her books because she writes some awesome fantasy books with Black protagonists that are great. You should definitely check them out. So that's my promotion for her. Also joining me is Matt Thompson as co-host from the Suffolk Public Library. Him and me are going to ask our guests a couple questions concerning Blerd culture and what they think Blerd culture is. And then we will open it up to the audience. You guys can write some questions in the chat and we will have the guests answer them as well. So it should be a lot of fun. So I guess we will get started.
Why don't we have our guests, Nix and Hilton, introduce themselves. Say a couple words about who you are and what you do, and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, do that.
My name is Hilton George. I am the founder and CEO of BlerdCon. Stretched out, that is the Black Nerd Convention here in DC, annual event. Coming up on its 5th year, but its 4th rotation due to a COVID leap year, where a lot of all the cons had to take a pause. The cosplay, multi-fandom, type of events that we like to go to. We're looking for more representation, diversity, inclusion of, Black nerds and all the intersectional minority groups that, overcross with the Black nerd community. And, right now we're one of the biggest niche conventions in the country, as I'm told. Awesome. And we're looking forward to coming back the weekend of July 16th this summer at the Hyatt Crystal City in Arlington.
First of all, I want to say thank you all for even thinking of me to be a part of this amazing panel with these amazing people. My name is Chauncey Dickens. I go by Nix. I am the host and the head content creator for everything that is Do You Speak Geek. It started out as a podcast. It's also a YouTube channel. Lately, we've been getting a lot of traction on our social medias, Instagram, as you all have probably seen if you follow us. My son Donovan is pretty much star of the show. The Do You Speak Geek content is mainly, we give you guys up-to-date news on everything as far as geek culture, nerd culture, comics, video games, TV, movies. If there's an astrophysics story that comes out, we talk about that. If there's new tech that comes out, we'll talk about that. We just try to be the central hub for everything that is latest and greatest from the geek and nerd culture realm. And we are stans of Hilton George and BlerdCon.
All right. Corey, you want to start us off?
Let's start with our questions. So the first one I had is what are your earliest nerd experiences or interests? What do you think was one of the first things that you thought was nerdy that you got into?
For me, I would say I remember the moment when I realized that I loved this whole culture of nerddom and fandom, and I was maybe 6 years old, and there was a free weekend of HBO. This is back in the day when they did free weekends. I think they still do that nowadays. I don't know for sure, but they had a free weekend of HBO. And I was at my grandfather's house, and I saw Superman for the first time. And when I saw this guy take off in this costume and this red cape and fly, I was stuck. And that is when I knew that I had found my thing that I love so much. I'd always watched the cartoons like He-Man and Silverhawks and Brave Star. That's really old school for so many people out there. But when I saw Superman for the first time, I was hooked. I was in, and I've been in ever since.
My story is a little different. I had to be informed that what I was doing was nerdy or geeky.
Okay, that's great.
I kind of had a natural proclivity to, art and comic books. I started reading comic books at age 9, probably where I learned to read, if I really think about it. And, when it wasn't until I got into middle school where I started to notice that, my lunch table crew was getting smaller and smaller. So you start to notice that, like, oh, okay, we're not the cool kids because we play Dungeons and Dragons and reading comic books and watch sci-fi movies on Saturday nights and all that kind of stuff. The earliest memory I have of kind of discovering the nerd that I was sneaking into a convention that was at NC State University called TriCon. And it's no longer in existence, but it was a campus event and we were too young to get in. It was all college students and adults. It was overnight. It was like a lock-in situation. And a friend of mine had, don't ask me how he got this. He had the schematics for the water pipes, the drainage pipes and the electrical pipes that went underground and came up in the buildings. So we went through the sewer and we snuck into the buildings. Yes, I don't know why, no sense of safety or self-preservation, but 8 kids, ages like 8 through 12, going like the Goonies, underground in the city of Raleigh and kind of looking at a little treasure map so we could come up into the building because they wouldn't let us in the front door. And coming up through, like, oh, this is you come up through and it's like the electrical room, all the little generators and breakers and stuff like that. And then once we were in the building, we were like going and watching all the sci-fi movies and, getting in on the games, and nobody really asked us any questions and stuff. And we spent the whole night, at the college campus. And then I said, there's nobody that I know my age that would do this. And when I was telling other people the story, they thought I was special needs. And then I realized, I guess this is where, this is where nerddom is, and just it's been a ride ever since.
It's such a good question, Corey. And listening to these guys talk, I'm thinking, how far back do I need to go? Like, when is my first nerdy experience? And it came to me as I was listening to these gentlemen speak. Weird Al Yankovic was so huge for me. I picked up his first album on cassette, which has
you are old.
Another one rides the bus instead of another one bites the dust.
What's a cassette? What's that?
I might even still have that in a drawer somewhere.
Dad has lit up. What's a cassette? Google it.
So following up on what Corey said about your early nerd experiences, how has your fandom changed over time? So to speak, both of you are kind of like in the fan business. Like, it's not just a thing that you do, but it's a big part of your identity and your daily life. Like, how has your fandom changed?
Well, I'll say that the Black nerd experience has come to the forefront in a way that was not even a discussion back when I was in elementary and middle school. You were just a nerd, and, I was a nerd and I was a Black in the South, and I compartmentalized my marginalization. So I was being marginalized for being Black in certain situations, social, geographic, educational, whatever. And you kind of just knew, being in the South, what that was. And it went in this box. And then there's more of the social marginalization that came with being a nerd. And they two didn't really mix. You didn't really, when you were in your nerd crew, everybody was kind of, in the same struggle. We're all focused on the same things. But it's now, as an adult, I'm seeing myself and others putting more of their identity. They are looking for reflection. They are looking for affirmation. They're looking for connection through their nerddom in a way that they didn't back when we were younger. I think a lot of that comes from, the internet and us having more social spaces and more social access, through the internet, social media, apps, phones, and devices. But we're seeing more people trying to figure out ways to express their identity through their geekdom. So you'll see more people who are saying, I'm a Black nerd, or I'm a Latinx nerd, or, they want to, figure out ways to express, their gender identity or their sexuality, even their nationality. You see that in cosplay, you see that in writing and comic books, you see it in music, and nerddom is everywhere now. That's another thing. It used to be comic books, Dungeons and Dragons, the odd artist like a Weird Al Yankovic or somebody like that. But now nerddom is cool. The experience of somebody who's a geek or a nerd who's under 25 is unrecognizable to somebody over 35. It's not uncool in the same way that it was when I was coming up. No one's getting beat up for wearing an anime t-shirt, today. There's gatekeepers everywhere, but it's not, it's more of an identifier of who you are, and some way that you identify yourself is now being seen, among other ways, through the lens of your fandom and from your geekdom and your nerdness.
Yeah, absolutely. He definitely nailed he definitely sealed it with that one. I would say, yeah, absolutely. The way that the culture's changed, so has my tastes for it has changed as well too. I've grown to love even more things. Some things that I loved more when I was a child, I don't love as much now. I find myself reading more DC comics now than I did when I was a child. Because as a child and teenager, going through angst, I was heavy into Marvel. Anything that was coming from Marvel, I was reading that. Definitely reading anything from Image. These guys were self-starters. It was pretty much a big movement, big F you to the man or whatever. So yeah, I was definitely all about that life. But absolutely, if you look at 1988 and then 2018, maybe 2008, and you say the words, hey, I'm a big Iron Man fan, that reaction is going to be completely different between those years, depending upon who's saying it and who you're saying that to. Nowadays, if you're a big Iron Man fan, you have other people who are quote unquote fans and also who love the culture behind Iron Man. But back in 88, since you love Iron Man, you would probably get a wedgie and a noogie. As Hilton said, the culture of it has completely changed, and being the Black nerd, that experience has completely shifted because it's actually cool now. You actually are able to find people who are like yourself, and you quote unquote have found your tribe. People have gravitated to you because they saw you wearing a Star Labs hoodie or saw you rocking a Dragon Ball Z keychain. It depended upon where your setting was. And I think definitely that has elevated to a level to where it's completely unrecognizable now to when it was maybe 10, even 20 years ago. But as far as my own taste, absolutely. I definitely watch more anime now. I listen to a lot more different music now. I'm really I'm heavy into nerdcore artists who rap and sing about nerdy things. I'm definitely into those people. But yeah, the culture, the way it changes, I think my taste and the things that I like change along with it, because I go where the culture goes. And if I love this culture, I'm going to go where it goes.
Nix, if you would, I want to piggyback off something you said. You were talking about the evolution of your geekdom and your nerdness, from when you were a kid till now. And you were talking about anime, and the first thing that popped in my head was access to the media. So I'm going to date myself here. So when I first got introduced to anime, most anime was something that somebody would have on a VHS tape. Now, for those of you in the audience who don't know what VHS tape is, it's like a big cassette tape, which you probably already Googled right now. So just think about the visual you just have. Right, and there's a magnetic strip. Anyway, the point is that you had to have a cousin in the Navy or in the Army who got stationed in Korea or Japan or somewhere like that, who would come back and would bring, unsubbed, undubbed anime back with them. And, the anime that I was watching outside of the Harmony Gold era with like Star Blazers and Robotech and early Dragon Ball Z was just stuff you didn't even know was going on because it wasn't translated, right? So you're just watching the animation. Whereas now there's thousands and thousands and thousands of anime, titles out there that you can choose from, through online, obviously the most way, where you now have more access to anime than probably any other media, maybe even comic books, because it's such an e-friendly medium. More and more people are watching anime. More and more people are accessing the music, the soundtracks, following voice actors, studios, distributors. We all have a much, much bigger access pipeline to geek media than we had in the past. So we are able to do more as geeks than we were 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
Absolutely. I grew up in a very, very small town, North Carolina. And
wait, which one?
Tarboro, North Carolina.
Oh, I know Tarboro. We got to talk. We got to talk. He made it out of Tarboro. We got to.
Yeah.
Sanford.
Okay. Yeah, we do have to talk. Small town North Carolina, man. And the only access I had to my comics was this family-owned drugstore, and they only carried top titles: Superman, Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men. That was it. If I had to get anything else, I had to go about 15 miles down the road to Rocky Mount, which you probably heard of as well, to get my comics. My first anime that I saw, I got from a flea market from this Jamaican guy, and he was trying to sell me on these tapes and everything. I'm like, okay, I know Voltron. You got anything like that? And he's like, what going, bro? Check this out, brother. And he gave me Ninja Scroll, and I was changed forever after I saw that.
You went from Voltron to Ninja Scroll?
It was that drastic.
Wow.
Drastic.
All right, Corey, ask another question.
I would say, so my next question, so I was going to ask about like your experience with nerd culture. Did growing up, or like even when you were young adults, I tried to talk age, even though I'm not gonna say it, but did you guys view like nerd culture as like being separate from Black culture? Like, was nerd culture like, did you have like a lot of friends that were also both Black and nerdy, or like did it seem like it was like two separate things?
Like, is nerdiness coded as white?
For a while, and if you grew up the way I grew up and experienced the negative side of being a Black nerd or a Blerd, at some point in your life, you may have been told you're acting white, or you've been called an Oreo. The separation between nerd culture and Black culture is not as wide as it was before. I mean, if nothing else, Black Panther, the movie, kind of shut that down. That kind of bridged the gap completely. But I think with Black culture, just the stories that we go through, as far as our pain and our struggles, we can somehow, and this is probably for me a big reason why people gravitate to anime, there are a lot of those same sort of stories that we can look at and identify with and say, hey, I know what that's like, which is why a lot of Black nerds do like anime. Even in the music sometimes, where we can hear certain kicks or snares when it comes to the themes in the movies, that kind of reminds us of hip hop. So as far as it being separated, I would say today, not as much as it was before, because I guess being a nerd now, because it has a title, Blerd, it's a lot more acceptable now than it was years ago.
Yeah, I have to agree with Nix on that. Coming up, you probably heard me say in my earlier statement about having to very early on compartmentalize my marginalization. Being in the South as a Black person automatically came with a certain amount of access that you didn't have, and ingenue that you didn't get. You were never cool. It was just something that, you felt that separation. But you also had this two-front fight, because you were feeling just like any other nerd friends that you might have. You were having, the same separation from the cool kids like everyone else, but it was only the Black nerds that had to experience, kind of marginalization of their own race. In other words, to be a nerd, everybody kind of had to turn in their cool card, but only the Black nerds had to turn in their race card, because listening to, certain kinds of music, dressing a certain way, things that were considered to be, air quotes, white, was things that kind of kept you out of this identity, this definition of Blackness that was incomplete at the time. We did not, within the Black community, make room for Black nerds. Now that's kind of wrapped in anti-intellectualism, the sense of being what we used to call in the South smarty art, like you're reading books and getting good grades and all that stuff. Those types of things, are still kind of problems that we have to work out, in the community to a certain degree, even today. But nerdiness and geekness, that sense of being uncool, was something that was separated from Blackness. Like Black people said, well, you have to be a certain way in order to be Black. And if you're not that, then you're being white. And it's totally antithetical to everything that happened in the 60s and 70s, because this romanticism that we have as Black people with Asian culture goes back 50 years. We've been into martial arts and martial arts movies more than any other demographic, since before Enter the Dragon. That was always a part of even the cool side was about having, some kung fu skills, and you would see the Blaxploitation movies with Black Belt Jones and, Jim Kelly and, even the guys that weren't martial artists would do martial arts just because that was what was cool. Have you ever watched a Dolomite movie? Rudy Waymore didn't know any martial arts, but he was doing these little kicks and stuff like he knew some kung fu.
He didn't know karate, he know crazy.
Right. So it was something that was there. But for some reason,
Black belt theater,
that did not make the leap over to anime. Even when Wu-Tang Clan was coming in, and the RZA and the GZA, and that whole crew was actually getting beats from China and Japan and Korea to make the music that people were jamming to. Those of us who love kung fu movies and even some anime would hear the melodies and hear the beats in Wu-Tang, and everybody be jamming to it, and we try to tell somebody, that's from the, and they be, no, we're not. You get back over in that corner where the nerds are. We're not mixing.
You're not hearing what I'm hearing right now.
Right. We should all be in one page, But that's happening more now than it did, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And it's a beautiful thing to see all of this media and all these fandoms starting to kind of bleed together. Where even, animated shows are looking and feeling and they're being written and treated like anime. You're seeing shonen characters in, American animated cartoons. You're just like, so I'm really liking that, but it wasn't that way before.
Guys, I'm wondering if, is there anything right now that kind of stands out to you as being bad representation? Or is there something that really catches your eye as good representation, like somebody is doing a good job? What do you think about the pop culture that's out there now? Is there anything that catches your eye?
I think a lot of it is dope, but I do think there's a fine line between representation and tokenism, and you have to be careful with that, especially when it comes to certain things. For instance, comics. If there's ever a opportunity to make a character Black or change the race or gender of a character, it has to be done in a smart way, in a way that makes sense, and in a way that is going to bring more readers, not just readers for that niche. There's, again, that fine line between giving us a character who's awesome, who happens to be gay or Black or female than just a female or a gay character and they happen to be a superhero. There's a big difference there. And I think that representation matters, but if we're doing it just for the sake of doing it, then that's when I think it's whack.
I don't want to sound like a gatekeeper here, and that's just a real tough thing for me. Because on one hand, I think that we in the nerd community in general are going to be forced to kind of open the doors and open our arms to bring in some of the latecomers. And there are many of us who are of the nerd community and of the nerd persuasion who have been that way for their entire lives, who are seeing people who were the same ones that were marginalizing us, for our geekdom, back in the day, kind of bringing themselves into the space, because of one or two things, like they follow all the Marvel movies now it's cool, here they come. So that can be a little tough for some of us to swallow, but I'm all for it. What I think is a dangerous thing when it comes down to, the Black nerd space anyway, is how hungry we are for anybody of note to even acknowledge that anime exists. And then we wrap our arms all the way around him and go, oh my God, he's otaku, because he watched Dragon Ball Z. Oh, okay, fine. Guess what? Everybody watched Dragon Ball Z because it came on, Cartoon Network. If you had a television and you were 10 years old during the 80s and 90s, you watched Dragon Ball Z. You didn't go down to Hollywood Video, to the back room and know what was what. You didn't have a friend who was in the army or whatever and sent you tapes. You didn't go like my man did, walking 15 miles in the snow uphill both ways to get his comic books. Right? He didn't have to do all that, to access this stuff. And so I'm kind of wary of that. And I don't know where I'm going to draw my personal line, but I do think it can be dangerous if geekdom in general, specifically Black nerddom, is something that we just kind of throw around out of just this thirst for acceptance and us waiting for the world to kind of catch on to what we're doing. So the next time some famous ball player, says, hey, I'm wearing a, Dragon Slayer shirt, and we just kind of just embrace them as if that's, somebody who's into everything. And it might just be he found that shirt in his cousin's, bin and wore it that day, and maybe doesn't necessarily know everything about it and is maybe not a big fan. So I think we got to be careful with that. But other than that, I haven't seen anything that I consider to be negative or destructive that comes from, this broadening of the definition. I think it's all a net plus. It's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of us. And pretty soon Disney's going to own it all anyway, so we might as well have fun while we can do stuff like this without licensing, right?
Wow, yeah.
On the topic of representation, was there a moment when you realized that Black representation in media was important to you? I feel like for a lot of people, like maybe like when the Black Panther movie came out, that was like, oh, that's the first real Black superhero movie, even though there was Blade, but like
Blade, y'all, Blade.
There's always Blade.
It's a whole other show. That's a whole other show.
No one can forget Blade. We don't forget Blade. But like for a lot of people, like seeing Black Panther was like one of the first big representations. I know for me, like I guess my first big representation was probably the Static Shock cartoon. So like that was like, I was like, oh cool, he's a Black superhero teen, and I was like, oh cool. But what was that for you, or did you have an experience like that?
To me, Black representation became very important to me when a lot of the content that I grew up reading and listening to, or just more so reading, when it came to the comics, when these larger than life characters start to be portrayed, on the big screen. And I think I recognized that, oh, this is Billy D. Williams in the Batman movie, but he's playing Harvey Dent. Okay, that's interesting. However, he wasn't a Black man in the comics, but I thought that was pretty cool that they thought enough of the character to make Billy D. Williams portray Harvey Dent. And then, I guess when the the guard changed for Nick Fury, and I was like, okay, yeah, Nick Fury is definitely gonna be a black man. It's Sam Jackson, awesome, gotta be. But then I think back to some of the more lesser known, or I guess I guess you could say slapstick kind of representation when you think about Meteor Man and Blank Man. It's the way that it was done. I don't think that it was spoof, but I think it was representation of blackness and just someone trying to be a hero for their community or for their family. Representation definitely does matter. And to see it now being portrayed in a wide variety of avenues like film and TV and even podcast, I think it's absolutely important. But I started noticing it a lot more, well, at least I began to notice it, period, when I saw Billy D. Williams as Harvey Dent. That was like, oh, okay, so we can be in these movies with Batman and Superman now. Okay, I get it. It's cool.
Yeah, I agree with Nix on that. I think where it really hit home for me was watching it come full circle. You know, my professional background is in education, working with young people. And, you know, you walk the halls of a high school in the inner city, and you see what people are wearing and how people are talking and how the external forces are affecting this internal space of the Black community. You know, you started to notice, and this is before Black Panther. We got to remember, we had the Luke Cage phenomenon came before the Black Panther movie, and it was this huge thing where you had, and they were both very Black in their own way, but I would argue that Luke Cage was Blacker even than Black Panther, and here's why. This was in Harlem, based in the back of a barber shop, you know, listening to old school R&B music in the backgrounds, you know, fighting for the hood, fighting for the community hero. And then, you know, of course, during the BLM period, kind of coming to its apex around the time where a bulletproof Black man is being seen on the screen, that was not lost on me either. Yeah. And more important than that, what was happening on the screen for those of us in the know was what was happening behind the scenes. You know, who was writing and who was doing the producing and who was doing the directing, you know, not just who was on camera, but what was being portrayed, what was the story. And I think that's what really makes a Black Panther or a Luke Cage a little different from Blade. And this is why. Blade was Black, but this character in this movie was not telling a Black story. You know, he technically could have been played by anyone. Wesley Snipes, bless him, love him. He did a great job of bringing that character through three iterations that I really loved. But it was never like this, you know, we're going to tell this Black story with this character in the movies. They did a little bit of it in the series that everyone's not a fan of, but the movies were not really focused on that. And that's why I think a lot of folks blow right by it when you start talking about Black representation in the nerd space. But you go to cons and you see the community being affected by a movie like Black Panther, and you see people getting an appreciation for, you know, Black storylines and, you know, Black independence and empowered women on screen. We can't forget, you know, there were no damsels in distress in that movie, and that really, really stood out. A young person, and this is what I was saying to a colleague about it when it came out, a young person coming up watching and enjoying a movie like Black Panther is going to be a better person. Because if you love that movie and anything about it, the things that you are taking from it, Black empowerment, women empowerment, fairness, you know, issues with colonization, you know, all of those things are wrapped into the movie. And I was seeing that effect on little kids who are dressing up like a character, you know, going to the movie. Remember, we had all those premieres and stuff where everybody was dressed up in their dashikis and looked like the opening scenes from Coming to America. We all had our kente cloth on going into the theaters and stuff like that.
It was Wakanda and Zamunda.
I was one of them. I got my dashiki ordered straight from Nigeria, paid the extra.
Ooh.
I was not playing, man. I was not playing. I was
Well,
ready
all
to make it
stops.
work. So when you see that effect and you see, you know, an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old looking at a character that reflects them and positively, standing next to maybe one of their white counterparts, you know, also cosplaying Black Panther, you know, who's his white father with a white son saying that's the only thing he'll cosplay is his favorite character. I'm like, okay, you know what? There's part of me that just knows that kid is going to be a better human being for having taken on and personalized, you know, the all the things that came subliminally through this really, really great movie, but because it was well acted and well written and well designed and true to form. So that was what really, really hit me about, you know, representation and seeing the effect of it, even though I was conscious of it long before.
I could ask another question, but let's give the audience a chance to jump in here. Corey, you want to do it via chat, or you want to do it on mic, or what's your plan?
If you guys could write in the chat. I've been looking. I haven't seen any questions yet. That there's.
If you've got a question for Nix or Hilton, type it in the chat real quick, and we'll give the audience a say in what we talk about next.
I can hear the keyboards clicking across the nation. Just like, oh, you're gonna let me ask a question? Well, hold on.
Yeah.
So
Also, this is
almighty.
a graded assignment, and it counts as 10% to your final grade. Just kidding.
Pop quiz. Pop quiz.
All right. So the question we got is, what was your journey like actually launching BlerdCon? BlerdCon. What were most people receptive and excited for it?
Yes, in a big way, and no, in a little way. And here's what I mean. BlerdCon came about, you know, it was just, I'm a cosplayer. That's where how I entered into the con space. And I had way too much time and way too much access to disposable income. And I went to all the cons I could go to for like 4 years straight. I was in Atlanta, New York, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida. I was going to every con I could go to. I had pent up my nerdiness and was just going crazy. I was a costumer from before that and discovered cosplay late in life and just went crazy with it. And I discovered that the cons that were in big cities like Atlanta, New York, they were very diverse as far as the attendance, but the representation was not necessarily matched by the guest list in proportion to, you know, what the audience looked like, the attendance looked like, or the subject matter, or the people on the dais at the panels and workshops did not reflect, you know, the people in the audience in attendance. Neither did the subject matter. And I said, well, you know, all I really see at most cons at this point is they have the diversity panel. And that would be the title. It'd be called the diversity panel. And you go and you don't know who's going to be on the stage and you don't know what kind of diversity they're going to be talking about. And it's a half hour and everybody screams and yells and, you know, and then we leave mad. And because nobody wanted to do the diversity panel, nobody really knew how to tackle it, sensitive issues flying around, all of this stuff. And I said, well, you know, why couldn't we create a convention that's kind of built around representation and inclusion of Black nerds and the intersectionals? You know, there's so many, we touch almost every demographic with the Black nerd identity. You know, we're in the LGBT community, we're in the disabled community, you know, we are, you know, obviously we're mixed, we got Blasians and Afro-Latinas and all of that get touched under that umbrella. And I said, that would be really cool. Now, part of me that just said, make that happen was the part that I had in college, because I was the guy that threw all the parties and, you know, did concerts. And I was a low budget Puff Daddy in college. So I had a background in doing events.
You were Michael Bivins. I got you.
I was that guy. I was the guy handing out the flyers at homecoming. Like, all right, I'll see y'all at the spot. Come on out. You know, ladies free before 10, you know, that kind of stuff. And so I kind of had this sense to say, well, give it a try. And we started putting stuff together. And I called up a man and we started putting the business plan and everything together like that. Now, where it got both the pluses and minuses is that, you know, when you have an omnibus title like BlerdCon and you don't really have a lot of BlerdCons happening, you know, there are Black conventions, there are a lot of them that have run along, but BlerdCon was going to be something different. And I think a lot of people looked at our marketing and looked at the con and the promise of the con, and they projected onto the convention all of their highest ideals and all their perfect scenarios. And, you know, obviously, you know, when the con can only be one thing at a time to one group of people. And so there were a lot of things that we were trying to put forward that people were really, really, really excited about, that when they got to the con, they didn't really care so much about. And usually it was stuff that I work really hard on. I'm not taking that personal, but, you know, a lot of stuff that we were putting together was stuff that, you know, we were just throwing the kitchen sink at it just to see what was going to work and what wasn't. So people kind of would run into each other and say, BlerdCon is going to be this. And then somebody would walk in and say, no, BlerdCon is going to be that. And then they both turn to us and say, hey, is BlerdCon going to be this? And we were like, listen, it's a community event. The community is going to come in and they are going to shape the convention based on what they prioritize. That's going to be guests, that's going to be panels and workshops and all of that. And we'll see how it happens. We got really, really lucky in that we had just a really, really great turnout in year one. There were people, there are two kinds of Black nerds out there, okay? And everybody outside might not know this. This may be your first time hearing it. There's the Black nerds like me and Nix. We came up in the South, where it's not a high Black concentrated population, especially of Black nerds, where going to a con like BlerdCon, you may not have ever seen more than 5 Black cosplayers standing in a circle at any point in time in your life. So to see 10 or 20 or 60 is a religious experience for you. You've never made this connection for you. You're just like, the mothership has landed, I'm in Wakanda, you know, whatever.
I'm in Wakanda.
The other type of Black nerd is the brother who lives on 126th Street in Harlem, whose relationship with his or her Blackness, you know, has never had to be separated from their geekness. Because if you go to the comic book shop in Harlem, there's Black people there. If you go to the cons in New York or in the boroughs and stuff, there's a lot more representation. There's a lot more Black expression there. So they would come down to BlerdCon and we go, hey, it's pretty cool. You know, this is all right. You know, it's not, I see more Black people at the coffee shop, to be honest with you, but, you know, this is a different thing, you know? So creating a convention that is not overmanaged, but then allows for the community to have the conversations and the interactions and be the representation that they want to see has been the art and the success of the convention thus far. And we're hoping to continue that from year to year, replicate what people like, you know, maybe take some of the stuff that's not so popular and move that off to the side and just kind of keep moving like that. But it's a good question. And we're discovering new stuff every day. Because like I said, we're blazing some new trails and we're going into new territories and we're having a blast doing it. So hopefully we'll see you this summer.
Another question from the audience is, for people of color who are more isolated from Blerd culture, where can they convene with other Blerds besides cons? Is there any particular spaces online or any places you would recommend?
Yeah, definitely. Any sort of groups, safe groups on social medias like Facebook or Discord. I hear this new app called Clubhouse is pretty popping. You can check that out as well too. But as far as avenues of linking with other Blerds, it's a lot more easier now than it used to be, because as you know, Hilton said, you know, growing up in the South and someone who had to kind of keep their nerdiness kind of secret, you could be sitting right beside a guy in class and not even know that he's just 2 episodes behind on Ronin Warriors. Like he's watching Ronin Warriors just like you are, but you've never talked to this guy before about anything except, hey, you watched the game last night. So I think it's very easier now to just go in and, I mean, like hashtags are powerful. You can just go into social media, put in a hashtag and find that sort of a thing that you like and kind of narrow it down to the city or town or where you live in. Fortunately for me, I live in Norfolk, VA. So I gravitated and found a lot of Blerds who I connect with, other people of color, Latinas, a few. I got this one guy, heavy into nerdcore, and he is of Asian descent. He actually put me onto nerdcore hip hop. But yeah, finding people of color and other Blerds to connect with is a lot more easier now, especially through social media. I think that is one of the best things about social media, to find people of your own tribe, as I put it sometimes. But yeah, social media, start there, look for certain things, find people that you work with, communicate with, kind of throw out little feelers, just talk about things that you like and build relationships from there.
I think Nix is right on the money with that. I would add to say, let your freak flag fly wherever you go.
Ooh, yeah.
That's even for me, that's a struggle. Knowing people think that I'm probably some kind of a free-formed geek. I'm the only nerd in my family. I go home and people still don't know what the hell I do. They still don't understand cons. They don't understand cosplay outside of Halloween. I showed my mom my first flyer. She thought that I was getting back into my artwork and thought I had drawn it. And she was really proud. I was like, no, but read it. This is, so the connections are really tough sometimes. But I say, like, wear your hat and wear your gear, when you go to the mall, even if you go into like church functions outside of mass, obviously you got to dress a certain way, yeah. But you'll find your tribe far more easy when you're wearing, your, My Hero Academia shirt, or your favorite video game, music playing in your car. If you're listening to the music you love, you'll find that person that we used to just sit next to and not know was as much a nerd as we were, because we never really articulated the conversation. And depending on where the questioner is coming from, if you're on a college campus, there's probably a club nowadays. They got clubs for anime, there's clubs for video gaming, so they got video game teams now, esports, so if you're on a college campus now or at a high school, they got actual clubs now for the fandoms that you could probably sign up and meet and mix with people. I have done a lot of outreach in the high schools and middle schools through the nerd groups. I'll come and speak to, or come and have, viewings or presentations to the nerd group at the high school. And you see everybody showing up, women, men, young, old, it'd be seniors, freshmen, and they all come together on that basis of nerddom, where I know if we were in the cafeteria and they were all just kind of looking for somewhere to sit, none of these people would sit next to each other, because you're a freshman, I'm a senior, you're a boy, I'm a girl, I'm a jock, you're, a nerd, whatever it is. But in that room, everybody was of one tribe. So let your freak flag fly, and you will find your people. And you'll find that there's a lot more nerd energy out there now than there was in the past. And you can make connections even outside of the cons.
I think two questions that can easily start a conversation between whoever your next nerd friend's going to be. One of those questions is, A, who would win between, or if you have a superpower, what superpower would you have? Those two questions I have always seen that can just take conversations from a couple minutes and they can last hours. So try those out for the person who asked that question. Try those questions out, and I guarantee you'll find some Blerds and nerds that you gravitate with.
There was one last question that I saw. It was about cosplay. I saw not so much a question, but would you like to talk about issues surrounding Black people cosplaying white characters?
Ooh.
Yeah.
Listen, you will not find a more controversial subject than, race bending in cosplay. And
race and gender.
Oh, and gender. But I'll tell you, cosplay has two spectrums. You have people who cosplay for accuracy, right? And sometimes you find people who are just models, who just look like somebody who was tapped to do something for the purposes of a photo shoot. And we see a lot of pictures of those people who are just they explode on the scene, but they look just like Valkyrie, or they look just like Storm, or what have you. But then there's also cosplay over here that's more about an expression of your fandom. And I think the expression of your fandom is where, you should be able to inject and insert yourself You know, if you want to be a Black person cosplaying a white character, or vice versa, if you want to gender bend your cosplay, you know, all of those sorts of things are a little bit more, I think with that mindset, you find more people who are open to, you know, understanding that there are fans across the board for everything that could be cosplayed. But those people who are looking for accuracy, who are doing it for accuracy, who don't want to really stay in cosplay, I have my judgments about, my opinions about that sort of thing, but there are folks who just get in cosplay long enough to take the photos, then they get the hell out of that cosplay, and then they go, you know, throw on their little brown paper bag, and then they go do what they're going to do. When I cosplay, I'm in cosplay all day long. I'm in character all day long because that's something I love to do, and I'm expressing myself. People are different, but I think in that expression of fandom, anything goes. It's an art form. Yeah, I think it's what's beautiful about cosplay is that you can say that I am a fan of a certain genre or a certain, you know, show or a certain comic series or book series or anything, and I'm going to mix it with who I am, and I'm going to present this to you in an external way. The person you see standing in front of you is the person that I am on the inside, who's both Black, you know, who's a fan of a white character, or of a male who's a fan of a woman character, and I'm paying homage to that character in the best and the most intimate way that I can. So you should not shy away from doing any of that. Just make sure you're being respectful. If you're doing anything else, you know, that's kind of traditional or religious or culturally sensitive, and you should be fine.
Yeah, to piggyback on what he said, absolutely. I not only agree with race bending when it comes to cosplay, I encourage it, and I think it's important. I want to bring up a cosplayer, one of my favorite cosplayers, as an example. I'm sure you all may have seen the guy Hellspawn cosplay. Hellspawn cosplay is a cosplayer who once did a cosplay of He-Man, one of my favorite characters as a kid. I'm dating myself on that. But he did this crazy Afro style He-Man, and it caught on like wildfire across the internet, to the point where this man has now become canon in He-Man comics from DC. He actually has the official letter from DC. He has his own pop. He has his own action figure. All that came from just him expressing himself. So I think it's very important to be on that spectrum, how Hilton put it, be on that spectrum, express yourself. If you are 5'4", weigh about 225, 230, go ahead and cosplay as Nightwing. Put the spandex on. If you are 7 feet tall, it's okay to be Wolverine. It won't be comic accurate, but do your thing. I think it's very important that you just express who you are and who your fandom is. Damn what anyone else thinks. If you love this character and you have the time and the talent, because it definitely takes talent and time to cosplay, go for it. Let your freak flag fly. Go to the cons, and I guarantee you there'll be someone there like, oh my God, that's amazing. And they'll be not only impressed, but they'll be inspired by what you've done.
Cool. What do you want to do, Corey?
I was just going through and seeing if there's any other questions up here. It doesn't look like there's any more from the chat. If there's any more last minute questions,
Nix and Hilton, why don't you take a minute to hype Do You Speak Geek and BlerdCon and let the audience know how they can connect with you after this program.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, blerds and nerds, freaks and geeks, this is Nix from Do You Speak Geek. This is DYSG. DoYouSpeakGeek.com is the website. You can check out any and all of my content there. As far as the podcast, it's pretty much everywhere. The home team is Spreaker.com, but if you don't have a Spreaker login, that's fine. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, where am I not right now? Audible. The podcast is everywhere, so you definitely check it out there. The social medias, DYSGFB, Twitter, DYSG_tweets, and Instagram at the Speak Geek. Definitely follow the Instagram account, because the Instagram account is starting to do a lot of live interviews with other Blerds and just other content creators. We'll be talking to fellow podcasters, cosplayers, nerdcore artists, just a lot of interesting and dope people that we'll be talking to. This month, my son has been doing his 28 Days of Black Cosplay pics. Those have been adorable, but he's okay. You know, I'm cute and he is. But yeah, definitely follow us on the social medias. The YouTube channel is where you can see all of our videos. That's the only place where you can see the Daddy and Dono show. Sorry, the Dono and Daddy show. I don't want to get, sued by him, because he's definitely the Beyonce of the group. But it's the Dono and Daddy show on YouTube. Check that out. There, all of our videos are there. Even more content from me is there as well. And hopefully by the time we get this con season kicked up, I'll be definitely seeing you guys at cons. Come to my table, shout them out. Merch is coming soon. Other content's coming soon. But yeah, DoYouSpeakGeek.com is where you can find everything.
Well, BlerdCon is shaping up for this summer. It looks like we might be one of the first, if not the first, medium to large scale conventions that are going to be taking place on the East Coast after COVID and everybody gets vaccinated and all that sort of stuff. I want everybody to feel comfortable, when they go back to the con space. We're doing everything that we can to make sure that it's going to be a safe and fun experience, putting a lot of our events outside. We have a big food truck rally. If you've ever been to BlerdCon, the food truck rally is a really big fun part of the con. So we got this big parking lot behind the hotel. We're going to be doing some, some things inside the hotel to make sure that that's a safe space for everybody, mask wearing, PPE, the whole nine. But we're really looking forward to coming back. It'll be a year and a half since we've all been back in the con space. We never expected to be where we are now, and having gone through what we went through with COVID. And there was just no way to imagine it, but it happened. And the convention community is coming together, and they've got a lot of really great things coming up. So remember, that is on the weekend of July 16th. Advance tickets for full weekend badges is $60 in advance. Don't forget, it's a 24-hour convention, so we don't turn the lights off for anything. So if you have a sleep schedule issue, it's going to be a real problem at BlerdCon, because everything just keeps going for 3 days straight. That's how we designed it. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So stay hydrated and get your 5-hour energy and drink it 5 times. You're going to need it. That being said, follow us on our social media. We have a Twitter page under BlerdCon DC. Our Instagram is BlerdCon. We have a group and a page on Facebook under BlerdCon. We keep an event for BlerdCon 2021, where we'll be putting out announcements and details. Obviously, the website, blerdcon.com, is where you can find tickets and links to the hotels and get more information. Staying in tune with us on social media is really how you stay in tune with the community. We've got almost 20,000, 25,000 people who have come through the convention, who are followers and supporters of the convention, that are subscribed to our social media and to our website. So I recommend that you do the same. That way you'll be the first to find out about all the cool stuff that we'll be doing. And the team is coming back together. We're making plans and putting it all together, and hopefully we'll see Nix and everybody here on the virtual dais. We'll be in the building, and hopefully we won't be crying too much, because we all miss each other so much after being locked down and buried like hobbits for a year and a half. But we'll come out nice and pale and pasty and and see the world for the first time. We're looking very much forward to seeing you. It's been an honor. It's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege for us to be this event for the community. And so please feel free to follow us and ask us any questions that you have through the social media, and you can find us there.
Yeah, man, I'll definitely be there. I can't miss the family photo this year. Definitely.
We've still got more stuff to come with Black History Month at Suffolk Public Library. I'm doing hip hop trivia next Thursday evening at 7. Corey, you got anything else on deck?
We are what's coming up. The next thing, well, for teens, we're doing like a teen activism program. We're talking about how young adults can get involved in protesting and all that stuff. So it's definitely interesting if you have any younger relatives or if you're a young person yourself, definitely check it out. So
What
yeah,
time is that hip hop trivia thing going on?
That's next Thursday at 7.
yes.
I might try to make that.
I will
Alright.
put the link for that in the description as well.
The unfair advantage, sir. Just noting that for the gambling people in the audience.
But yeah, thanks again to our guests, Hilton and
Thank
Nix.
you.
I really appreciate you guys taking your time and coming and answering some questions and chatting with us. Oh yeah, also my coworker Kirsten mentioned our Black Business Ownership panel, which is happening on the 26th at 6 p.m. A bunch of local Black business owners will be there chatting it up. So definitely check that out as well. Thanks to all our guests for coming out this evening. We really appreciate it. And we'll chat with you guys soon. And shout out to Matt's Princess Mononoke shirt.
Princess Mononoke's out.
It's I wore my Static shirt for my other panel, so it's still in the wash. So I'm upset. I'm upset. But anyway, thanks for everyone for coming. I will see you all in the future. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.